Bills reporter Maddy Glab joining us for the ultimate and final mock draft watch edition. What are the final mocks before the draft saying about the Bills pick at number 27? Maddy, take it away. Have we seen a shift of any kind here in the final edition?
It's been a little wild out here, and I just have to say I have an addiction to these mock drafts. I'm at the point where there's going to be several more that come out throughout the day and even tomorrow morning, and we're releasing this on the website tomorrow. But I'm like, when do I stop tracking these? I have 171 tracks right now, so I'm going through in my mind the war of, do I keep going until late tonight? Do I stop now? Do I even go until tomorrow morning? I think I'm at a good place now with what we've seen, that we may be done here, but who knows, because I'm a crazy person. But we've tracked 171 mock drafts total. Of those 171, guys, running back, offensive line, those were the favorite positions being mocked to the Bills. And in the 11th hour, the wide receiver comes out of not nowhere, because it makes sense, but wide receiver is now the favorite position being mocked to the Bills at 41 times. And this has really shot up in the last few weeks. We've seen linebackers a lot. We've seen wide receivers a lot. But in the most recent mock draft watch 10.0, wide receivers stand head and shoulders above any other position group. So we tracked 18 in the latest mock draft watch, and of those 18, 13 times a wide receiver was mocked to the Bills.
Is there one name in particular?
The names have kind of been divvied out. There hasn't been a crazy favorite among those wide receivers. Jordan Addison has been mocked to the Bills 3 times in the latest 18. Zay Flowers 3 times. Quentin Johnston 2 times, and Josh Downs 2 times. Those are the favorites in the last 18 that we've tracked.
That's pretty balanced, though.
Pretty balanced. I thought Jordan Addison would have more. I think if you look at the last 30 to 40 mock drafts tracked, Jordan Addison would definitely be the favorite, because he has just been a name that's been showing up in almost every mock draft watch that we've released, and a name that's showed up multiple times. But of those last 18 that I've tracked, 2 offensive tackles, 1 defensive tackle, 1 linebacker, and 1 defensive tackle. No running backs. This is the first time that we've done a mock draft watch where I have not seen a running back be mocked to the Bills.
Although today, just cruising around on social media, I saw this report from someone who's supposedly in the know, and they're saying if you get down to the Bills at 27 and there's no value at their need positions, do not rule out Jahmyr Gibbs. And I'm like, oh my gosh!
Here we
all
go
this
again.
time, we're here talking about no on Bijan Robinson, and now 11th hour, they're like, oh yeah, well, Bijan will be gone now. Here's Jamar. Now they want to throw us Jahmyr Gibbs. It's like, come on.
Yeah, they're not taking Jahmyr Gibbs. They got Damian Harris and James Cook and Naheem Hines. They ain't going anywhere near that spot. I don't think.
I hope not.
I mean, they may. What do I know? But there's no way. Not given the 27th guy in the draft that's going to be available. They're going to be able to get a really good wideout. They're going to be able to get a really good, maybe even a really good edge rusher, defensive tackle. Those positions are more likely, even given their last 3 or 4 drafts that they've taken a defensive end in each one of them. Even that's more likely than a running back to me. And it's also more likely than a middle linebacker.
Yeah, where are we on the linebacker train, Maddy?
So on the linebacker train, I'll talk overall mock drafts here. So anytime we're saying numbers or people, players, it's 171 total that I tracked. Far more in February, March, and April than January. We started tracking these late January after our season wrapped up. So we saw a lot more in the last 3 months versus the last 4 months. So linebacker, where does linebacker fit into this conversation? A linebacker was mocked to the Bills 27 times. That is tied for the 3rd favorite position group.
Okay.
So it goes 41 for wide receiver, 40 for offensive linemen, and if you break it down, 26 interior offensive linemen, 14 offensive tackles, 27 running back, 27 times a running back was mocked to the Bills, and 27 times a linebacker was mocked to the Bills. Next is defensive back, and then defensive line has 11. Tight end only 3 times.
Yeah, I think D-line is kind of a sneaky one.
I think so too.
For pick 27, because Steve and I were talking about this yesterday. I think there is a general belief that a lot of the offensive value is going to be off the board by the time the Bills are on the clock, if in fact they stay at 27. And so the value on the board at that time, Steve and I were talking about this, we kind of think it's going to push the Bills towards a defensive player. Now, it may not necessarily be a linebacker. Maybe the value is even better at an edge rush position or a defensive tackle position. And you think about what could be down there based on all the mocks that you've tracked, and it seems like the value is greater at those 3 positions than at any offensive position.
In the last few that I've looked at today and yesterday, I mean, I've seen Kalijah Cansey fall far. I've seen Mazi Smith fall far. I've seen Miles Murphy fall far. I've seen other defensive tackles fall beyond where they were being mocked to these teams, I would say, a couple months ago, even a month ago. Brian Brzee seems to be available there. Definitely Mazi Smith. As I said, Nolan Smith also has been around there, and one that I looked at recently today.
Nolan Smith would be.
He was available for the Bills to take, and I think he went number 30 or number 31. I can't remember, but he was available at the end. I don't know if I see that happening.
I can't get myself excited to even think about that.
I've seen Kalijah Cansey kind of around the 20s.
See, now that's interesting.
In the last few that I've
that one's
looked
interesting.
At.
We know that he's not a measurables guy because he is kind of in the same size measurables as an Ed Oliver. I mean, he's got fantastic test numbers that he had at the Combine, and he's been a productive player at Pitt. And the latest that we were hearing even last week was that he's going to go somewhere between 10 and 20. Now some people suddenly think he's going to be available at 27. I mean, that's going to be a tricky conversation for the Bills to have there because, as we've talked about, Steve, all 4 guys on the last year of their contracts at that position for Buffalo.
It's intriguing, no question about it, particularly if one of those guys that you don't expect to fall falls. Can't see.
There's always 1 or 2 every year.
If Nolan Smith drops.
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, you can tell by our reaction, we both think
I'll be stunned.
I will be too. The only way, I laugh because this is what we've been talking about all day. The only way Nolan Smith falls to us is if they get footage of him in a gas mask. That's the only way.
And that probably will not happen because he's clean. He's clean on character, as far as I've learned.
But you know what I mean? That's how good he is. That's how good he is.
Yeah.
So if he does fall, take him. I'm fine. I don't care if it is another guy like that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I think what could affect this first round, and it's something that happened recently, the Packers moving up to 13 here, I think could have a say in when the run on wide receivers begins. Because even if you move up 2 spots in this draft, there's 5 total wide receivers that a lot of people have first round grades on. And if that run starts just 2 teams earlier, by the time the Bills are on the clock at 27, they could be sitting there saying all the wide receivers, including Quentin Johnston, are gone. So I think that could definitely happen. Darnell Wright has flown up on mock drafts. He's going in the 10 to 15 range, even in some of these mock drafts. I've seen as high as the Bears at number 9. So the offensive tackles and the wide receivers, I think, will have a big say in who's available at 27 because I could see a run starting earlier for the wide receivers. We know some of those offensive tackles are going to be off the board very early.
The Packers are an interesting case study here because obviously they moved up from 15 to 13 with the Rodgers trade. And during Rodgers' 15 years as their starting quarterback, they've never taken a receiver in the first round. They just drafted 2 last year. Do we honestly think they're going to take Jackson Smith and Jigba at 13? Maybe they do. Other people believe because they lost Robert Tonyan the tight end, that they're going to take the best
Right.
tight end in the
And they
class and
haven't
take
done that
Dalton
either.
Kincaid. That's not something they typically do. I would say the traditionalist in me, in thinking about what the Packers typically do there, they're going to take a tackle. But do they get tempted? Because I think a tackle is going to help Jordan Love just as much as a tight end or a
That's the
receiver
thing.
will.
We all talk about the arms race that the AFC is, and
The NFC isn't.
right, and the NFC's not. But if you're an AFC team and you kind of got your guys, offensive linemen are hard to find because they got to be big and athletic and all this stuff with them, and as we see in this wide receiver class and in this linebacker class, all these guys kind of tend to level out, and they're all the same guy, at least on paper. So when you're looking for guys with traits, offensive linemen are the ones that you know that you can measure and see. That's why Darnell Wright has skyrocketed on draft boards, because he's got these measurables, and then you watch him play, and you can see his attitude on film. And he's got the right attitude, particularly for a right tackle. He's got kind of like a mean streak in him. He plays with some grit. It's exactly the kind of person you want in front of your franchise quarterback. That's why he's going up and up and up, because you can see the kind of kid he is by the way he plays, and that's rare. And rare guys are hard to find, particularly with those traits. So, yeah, I'm forget the arms race. Offense is offense. It's going to help you score one way or the other, even if it's a tackle or a guard, even if it's not a wide receiver.
All right, so Matty, you mentioned Kalijah Cansey as a guy that you've seen in the recent mocks sliding. Now, whether they know something or not remains to be seen. I still think he's going between 10 and 20. Brzee is a guy that seems to be more likely to get into the Bills' range because he's been mocked in the early to mid-20s. So there's not far he would have to drop to get to Buffalo. Is he a name? How often has he kind of come up as a name for the Bills, if at all? Because I know you have defensive tackle in there only 11 times. My curiosity lies with who are the names that you have at defensive tackle more often than not.
Bryan Brzee has been mocked to the Bills only a couple times, I would say. Of those defensive tackles, I've seen Kalijah Cansey maybe twice. We really didn't see the defensive tackle position, honestly, start to be mocked to the Bills.
Mozzie Smith was the most popular one. Didn't you say that before?
Yeah, until March is when we saw defensive tackles coming along. And even more in April, defensive tackle was only mocked to the Bills once in February, and I think only twice in February and March combined as I'm scrolling through my list.
And that's before they had re-signed Jordan Phillips.
Yeah, Kalijah Cansey was the first defensive tackle mocked to the Bills once free agency started.
Okay.
And then as I scrolled down, I did see a trade up to get to Kalijah Cansey. There was a trade up to get to Nolan Smith. So I've seen a couple trades with defensive tackles. Bryan Brzee, the first time he was mocked to the Bills was in April.
Yeah, so that's a recent development.
So he's been more of a recent development, and his name, I believe it's only been once or twice that he's been mocked to the Bills.
But I'm on the mark with that, right? Like, we've seen Brzee come off the board more in the early to mid-20s.
Yes.
That's why I just think he might have a greater chance of being an option.
I think
if
he's
he
a greater
slides just
chance
a little bit
than
Cansey,
than
right?
Cansey, 100%. Yeah,
That's the thing
I've
is-
seen his name way more around when the Bills are available.
Even if the Bills do, even when they do pick at 27 without trading up, there's going to be a guy available whom we've all had conversations about and would be okay with them picking. The problem is there's going to be more than one. There's going to be like 4 or 5, and then there's going to be a couple that we don't know about. They're going to have really good careers as pros that you're going to say, wow, he was available. Wow, that's what you always do in these drafts when you go back and look. The question is, can you be objective enough when you're in there making that decision is to say, forget about how badly we need or want a middle linebacker or a defensive tackle for next year. This guy's going to be a really good pro, and we got to take him.
Right.
That's hard to do.
And I know we were talking earlier in the show about whether the GMs that need a quarterback in this draft are going to be influenced by how the 2018 draft played out in round 1 when there were 5 quarterbacks who came off the board and how those players panned out. Every case is different. I don't think we debate about that. But I wonder if defensive tackle is an option for the Bills at 27 based on the value on the board. Are they influenced by the way the 2019 draft unfolded when they took an undersized player in Ed Oliver, 9th overall, and the following defensive tackles went after him? Christian Wilkins, bigger player, I would say better body of work in his time in the NFL than Ed Oliver. That was followed by Dexter Lawrence to the Giants. Decent player, I think, on a par with Ed Oliver in terms of what he's accomplished in the league. And then 19th overall, Tennessee, Jeffrey Simmons, who just signed a gigundo contract and has been to the Pro Bowl almost every year he's been in the league. Right. Bigger, girthier, more dominant players than the quick, fast, athletic player. And I wonder if Brandon Beane's influenced by that, and if it is defensive tackle, go bigger.
Well, there's always that question, whether you go traits or whether you go body of work or whether you go the kind of guy he is or can his ceiling be reached? The upside. And particularly so, and when you look at the quarterback, you got a guy like Anthony Richardson, who is like the Josh Allen of the 2023 class, right? And look what's happened with Josh, who's he's in the conversation for MVP at some point every season. You have the same class with Josh was Lamar Jackson, who is also a little bit of a unicorn like Anthony Richardson. And then you've got guys like Will Levis, who is got a pretty good body of work, did some good things, but he's a little bit more like Sam Darnold, you know? He's got some things that don't click for him personality-wise, or Josh Rosen back in the 2018 draft. All these guys, the hard part is not mixing guys in together and saying they're like each other, because they're all different. Certainly they display traits, but Will Levis is going to be who he is. He's not going to be who Josh Rosen was or who Lamar Jackson was or who Baker Mayfield was. He's going to be Will Levis. And be like all those other guys, but he's going to have some things he brings to the table. It's so hard to pick guys because as much as they look alike, they're going to be vastly different in your system. For instance, Baker Mayfield might not have been the Baker Mayfield we know and love if he would have gotten picked by Carolina that year instead of the Cleveland Browns.
Right.
Or Baltimore Ravens.
It is where you land, and the player development skills of the staff around you. There's no question about that.
Josh is proof of that.
Yeah, Brian Dable got him right.
They said, they built a village around Josh that first year,
Yeah, not an offensive line, but they did the following year.
Yeah, and
because you remember how bad the offensive line was in 18.
But they did put some guys around him. Even the guy everybody hate. Nathan Peterman was a quality guy to have there with Josh to help him. And then with Dorsey being the smart guy he was, although was he there his first year?
No.
It was
Dable was there the first year.
Who's the quarterback coach?
I'd have to go back and look because it's slipping my mind right now.
But they built this village around Josh to get him ready to play on Sundays, and they went from there. And that's what these teams are going to have to do. If you're going to take a quarterback, you don't wait till you get him, see how he is to build around him before he gets there.
Yeah.
Don't
that's why Houston may not take one. At 2.
Yeah.
There's talk they're going to take a defensive player, and then if there's one still there, maybe they take one at 12.
Maybe they take Hendon Hooker at 12.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Give him a half a year, let him play behind the guy. And
I'm not ruling anything out this year. Maddy, why don't you remind everybody, and thanks for doing these mock draft watches. I know it's a tedious process, so thanks for putting them together all spring long in the pre-draft run-up. But maybe let everybody know where they're going to be able to find us with our draft coverage starting tomorrow night.
Yes. Before we do that, I want to share a couple new tidbits that I haven't shared yet about tracking these mock drafts. So we hear about the grades that people have on these players and how this first round you could see some names in there that you don't expect to see in the first round because grades are all over the place and people's draft boards are really different than other people, speaking about analysts and experts. Last year, 25 different players were mocked to the Bills. This year, 41 different players have been mocked to the Bills, which just speaks to the variety that people have in terms of grades on these guys. And then I also divvied up by month hot positions and hot names by month. So if I quickly run down when we started to track these in, I'll fast forward to February. So running back, was mocked to the Bills 13 times in February. By April, running back was only mocked to the Bills 3 times this month. So you've seen it really fall off. Safety was mocked to the Bills 10 times in February. Offensive guard was mocked to the Bills 7 times in February. Those were the popular position groups then. We move into March. Wide receiver mocked to the Bills 11 times in March. Wide receiver has been mocked to the Bills 22 times in April. March, linebacker was also a hot position group. 9 times linebackers were mocked to the Bills. 15 times linebackers were mocked to the Bills in April. So wide receiver and linebacker, those have been the 2 hot position groups in March and April. And then by player, Bijan Robinson was mocked to the Bills 10 times in February. I've only seen his name pop up twice in April. Osiris Torrance was mocked to the Bills 7 times in February. Then we move on to March. Osiris Torrance again mocked to the Bills 9 times in March. So Osiris Torrance was a favorite in February and March combined. He's also the favorite name, second overall, next to Bijan Robinson, being mocked to the Bills 18 total times. And then you move on to April, and the favorite name this month has been Jordan Addison. He's been mocked to the Bills 11 times. Second favorite name in April has been Drew Sanders. He's been mocked to the Bills 8 times.
Let's go.
So you're really seeing a shift off of running back and offensive line to wide receiver and linebacker as of late this month. So you're really seeing everything start to change. Will that be mirrored? Will that happen tomorrow night when the Bills are on the clock?
Well, I think your first note that you made there about the number of names this year as compared to the number of names last year, I think that's not only that's not only among mock drafters. I think that same variance of opinion exists with the personnel executives across this league, and it's why you and I, Matt, are going to be looking at each other tomorrow night going, who?
Have we heard of this guy yet?
Like him now?
Yeah, there's
It's
going to
be a lot of guys, and that's going to happen more than once tomorrow night. I think,
there'll
too.
be some guys, and they'll even the national guys will call those teams out on it. I mean, last year we've had a lot of fun with Cole Strange and the pick the New England Patriots. Let's not forget the guy started game 1. He played for him, so he's a pretty good player. But the concern is not just that you get a good player, but you get him at the place you can get him, the latest you can get him. You want to pick a guy who's a starter. You want to get him in the 5th round. You want to get a star player in the 1st round. You know what I mean? If you take a guy in the 1st round, there are certain expectations that go with him. It's going to be hard for him to live up to that. But that's what you got to do. You got to get value for the picks you can. That's why these teams are starting to trade down and think about it so much. The Bills are ripe to trade down. Only 6 picks in this draft. There's a ton of guys. There's going to be, like I said, there's going to be a handful of guys there that we're all going to will have been mocked to the Bills already because there's 41 guys. But it's going to be Osiris Torrance. It's going to be Bijan Robinson, or it's going to be Jordan Addison. Or, all these guys. They're going to be there. So you can have any one of them you want. Can you move back 4 spots and still get one you want?
If you have enough bodies, yeah.
Right. So you want to move back, get an extra pick, and still get a guy. And it doesn't matter what position so much as wide receiver, offensive tackle, defensive tackle, line, but whatever. But that's the whole key to this exercise in the draft. That's what happened. That's all the way back when Mel Kiper first started doing it, and those guys from the teams were like, "Who's Mel Kiper? I don't know." The guy doesn't even all that stuff. He was getting killed for it, but his tenet, the tenet he preached is true. Don't take a guy too early. Get a pick for that and get him later. You got to be able to do that.
And analytics has backed that up.
And I'm telling you what, man, with 6 picks in this draft, I'd be surprised if we don't come out with like 7 players.
A little move back action.
Yeah.
Okay. Maddie, quickly, where will people be able to find us in our draft coverage beginning tomorrow night?
All right, tomorrow after our 1st round pick, and then on Friday after our 2nd and 3rd round pick, we're going to be streaming live for some instant reaction. Chris Brown and myself will also have Greg Cosell join us to help us break down these prospects, and we'll lead into that Brandon Beane press conference that you guys all want to hear, and also the prospects who are drafting. We'll have them on live as well as they talk to the media for for the first time as a Buffalo Bill. You can find it on buffalobills.com and streaming on Twitter and also Facebook.
All right. I'll be watching you guys.
So if you're out and about and you're not in front of your TV,
I'll be
hop on your mobile app.
When
and
you guys are doing that, I'll be 2 sheets to win watching. So make
two,
sure, give me a
okay,
shout
not
out.
3 yet.
No.
Because it's gonna be a
be
late
late.
pick.
I
It's gonna be in the 11 o'clock hour somewhere.
I got to work Friday. So
That is true. You do have to come back to work on Friday.
I'm going to be watching your live stream, no question about it.
Yeah, looking forward to catching up with Greg Cosell, too, to break down whoever the Bills' first pick is, provided they stay in round 1.
Yeah.
That is the
we'll
caveat
see.
that Steve just pointed out. Maddie, thanks for all your help with Mock Draft Watch. It's been fun. We appreciate it. We'll see you tomorrow.